Hey, so it's been a while since we've spoken about the Buffalo Sabres, which means that I think it's time to speak about the Buffalo Sabres. What a stupid intro, I can't believe I just said that. Either way, we're talking about another idea that is brought up here on ProHockeyRumors.com. Don't worry, you hear Pro Hockey Rumors, you think, oh, it's a fake rumor he's talking about now. No, not really, it's just the status of the Buffalo Sabres that I kind of wanted to highlight over here. And in fact, this is indeed a similar video that we made to the previous kind of iteration of this topic, also from an article on Pro Hockey Rumors, talking about the Buffalo Sabres and how they're sort of handcuffed in a way. This entire Jack Eichel trade saga has been pretty bad for them in terms of their public reputation, in terms of the negotiations with other GMs. They just haven't been able to get anything done, and people on the outside are looking at this team and saying, man, what in the world is going on with the Buffalo Sabres? And it is kind of awkward because it gets somewhat worse when you start to look at the economics and the fundamentals of the Buffalo Sabres cap situation. Let's go over onto this ProHockeyRumors.com article talking about the Buffalo Sabres and what exactly this entire salary cap floor has to do with their predicament right here. This article was published a few days ago, and it says this: the Buffalo Sabres will be over the NHL salary cap floor by the start of the season. That much is obvious. While Cap Friendly currently has the club sitting at $2.3 million below the $60.2 million salary cap floor, that is with a 22-man roster that does not include unsigned RFA Rasmus Dahlin. While the 2018 first overall pick has not yet quite proven himself worthy of the considerable long-term deal signed by the other top defenseman this offseason, he will surely make more than $2.3 million AAV on his next contract. So, this article is bringing up just the main idea at the very beginning here, that the Sabres, hey, they need to spend a little bit more money, they have way too much cap space, they're not even at the cap floor just yet, but once they sign Rasmus Dahlin, who is definitely going to get more than $2.3 million, they will indeed be over the salary cap floor, and thus a valid NHL team. Right? This does not end the Sabres' battle with the cap floor, though. Just because they begin the season over the cap floor does not mean that they will remain as such all season, or at least not if they wish to have flexibility with their transactions. They then talk about Jack Eichel and his $10 million AAV contract. It's a very popular thing to bring up that, yeah, Eichel is really expensive, meaning that the amount of NHL teams that could actually go out there and make a trade for Eichel, hey, you're limited in that selection right there. There are so many teams that would like to have Eichel's services, but they just don't have $10 extra million to spend, now don't they? However, this article over here brings up the opposing perspective, how not only is it difficult for other teams that are going to be taking on Eichel and his $10 million AAV, but also for the Sabres themselves, especially if they want to pay attention to how they're going to be able to proceed into, let's say, the trade deadline in 2022, when they're going to want to trade away some of their guys. A team may offer Buffalo a plethora of top picks, prospects, and entry-level players, but the Sabres would not be able to make that deal alone, as if Eichel gets traded for picks and prospects and stuff that would technically not really cost any salary, it would bring the Sabres back below the cap floor, regardless of how much Dahlin is making. Buffalo would have to acquire a nearly equal amount of salary back in the deal, or be prepared to quickly turn around and add that salary in another deal. And as well as a rebuilding team, the Sabres don't really have the need to do that. They won't be eager to add high-priced veterans who serve little purpose to a team with no title hopes. This article's pretty much saying you can't go the expensive, overpaid, aging veteran route if you're Buffalo. You can't just take on guys that other teams want to get rid of that have extraordinarily high salaries, because what kind of purpose are these guys going to have on your hockey team? What kind of old aging vet would want to play in Buffalo to end off their careers? The options are so limited when you go out there and try to think about where you can viably get an extra $10 million worth of players and assets without getting on some bad contracts. If there's a trade with Jack Eichel that includes some random ragtag players to balance out the salaries, that's value being taken away from the Buffalo Sabres' potential return. Let's just say, for the sake of argument right here, Jack Eichel goes to Arizona, and the Coyotes send over Louis Eriksson and Jay Beagle and all that in the trade just to balance out the money. I get it, that's not going to happen, that's totally unrealistic, but just bear with me here. If you make this move, all of a sudden Arizona needs to add on so much extra stuff to make this trade actually worth it for Buffalo. You thought the price was going to be 4 first-round caliber assets, a top 4 defenseman, a top 6 forward, and a top prospect and a top pick? Well, if you add on Eriksson and Beagle to make the salaries match up, those are 2 negative assets right there, meaning that the Coyotes would have to add on even more firsts or even more prospects, which would go against the entire idea of even trading for a Jack Eichel, because if you're getting rid of, let's say, 6 first-round caliber prospects alongside of some bad players that bring your overall package's value down, but you need to do it because you get the salary in there to balance it out, it becomes so not worth it for any other NHL team to go out there. So Buffalo would have to do some of that Arizona magic themselves and say, okay, here you go, Philadelphia, you don't want Shane Goss to spare? We'll take him on for free. You have to go out there and actually get the assets that other teams do not want and would rather be okay with getting rid of completely. It's tough to find those because there are so few contracts like that in the NHL. The next paragraph goes over here, and it says this: even if Eichel begins the season with Buffalo, which seems increasingly likely, and even plays out the year with the team, the cap floor will still come into play at the end of the year. As the trade deadline approaches, the Sabres want to be in a position to take full advantage of their valuable trade assets. The team has 4 forwards, 4 defensemen, and 2 goalies who are impending UFAs, and whose expiring contracts would be worth far more to another team. Miller, Boucher, Eklund, Hinostroza. These are just 4 guys who stand out the most as potentially popular trade candidates, and depending on Dahlin's contract, could they move Hinostroza or maybe even Eklund or Boucher without going before the floor? Probably. But Miller? Or multiple moves? Likely not. The deadline is also not a place that is likely to even offer salary swaps either. So unless the Buffalo Sabres are going to really find a way to get some extra salary to bring that AAV up, they're kind of screwed over here. If you trade Eichel now, you're going to be below the cap floor. If you hold on to Eichel for a little bit into the season and you wait until the trade deadline, all of a sudden all the other guys that you're going to have to get rid of too, they're going to make your team go below the cap floor, even if you have Jack Eichel and even if you have Rasmus Dahlin. This team needs to get on salary quick, and maybe the solution is completely out of the realm of possibility. Maybe it's just some random, okay, here's a free agent on the market right now, Zdeno Chara. We'll give you 1 year, $10 million contract AAV just so we can help ourselves and get over the cap floor. No losers in this situation, right? You get the money, we get the guy to keep us over the cap floor and allow us to do our thing. Maybe they just go out there and sign an extraordinarily expensive contract to a guy that is not even a fraction worth of that, just to help themselves out. Because as a rebuilding team, the Buffalo Sabres will need to get rid of their assets that are expiring on UFA contracts this trade deadline. It's gonna happen. You're gonna see some moves made, unless, of course, the Buffalo Sabres are actually good, which I don't really think that's gonna happen. Now, don't we? But it would be extraordinarily irresponsible if Buffalo holds on to these guys, they let them go to free agency, and they don't re-sign them and lose them for nothing. You have all these assets now. Trade them away at the trade deadline, get some picks, get some prospects back, because that's what you want at this point in time. A Jack Eichel trade scenario is one part of your problems over here, but the economic environment surrounding that is the bigger idea. You have $10 million locked up into the guy that you're trying to trade as a team that's probably going to be like $3 million over the cap floor once you sign Rasmus Dahlin to his contract. Things are going to be really difficult for the Buffalo Sabres soon if they do not find a way to get more salary. And this article kind of wraps up talking about that entire idea. Okay, there are other free agents available. You can go out there and maybe see if you can get one of these guys to your squad. There are possibilities brought up in the piece. I will leave a link in the description of those of you who want to go ahead and read this. But talk to me in the comments. What do you think? Are there any options aside from, just the crazy, okay, here's Jason Beniers. Let's give him $10 million on a 1-year deal just because we need to help our contract situation out. Other than that, are there any actual viable options? Are there any more Shane Goss to spare Nicoletti kind of moves like Arizona did, where there are invaluable players making a boatload of money on teams that would rather use that money elsewhere, where Buffalo can just say, yeah, okay, we'll take on that guy, give him to us, and we'll keep him out for a year or whatever, and we'll use him maybe somewhere, I don't know where, just somewhere in the bottom of our lineup, and you give us some extra draft picks. We can take on this guy, it'll help us out in keeping over the salary cap floor, and then we can move Eichel, we can make our trade deadline moves, we can do all that stuff. Are there any other players like that? I know there are a lot of players that are not really all too great contract-wise in the NHL, but if you're a fan of any of these hockey teams that has players that you would get rid of literally for free and you would pay to get rid of them, like Goss to spare, like Ladd, where, okay, I don't want this contract, I'm going to get rid of this contract, and I'm going to even give up picks to get rid of this contract because it's so undesirable. Talk to me in the comments. Who is it that you want to get rid of, and would you see a trade to the Sabres as a somewhat beneficial kind of move to your team, even though you wouldn't really be getting anything in that trade aside from the cap space? Talk to me in the comments. What do you think about the Sabres and this entire conundrum? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.